Andrea Saénz. I am a Colombian native, and I have always expressed myself with all art forms. Since I was very young, I started singing and dancing and acting. And throughout my 16, I started taking voice classes with a private voice teacher, and I studied the classical technique and perfecting that technique, which takes years and years and years to perfect. And then participated in plays, and then just continued that. And that will always be my expression. Then I started a record label at UConn, so I got involved in the producing end. I was the president and founder. And then I worked with a French producer, assisting her. And now Dolce Ardor is a project that unites all of this. So I get to perform as a singer. I created the idea, the concept. Then I worked with DTO on making it come together. He's the producer, the music producer on this. And then I directed it, produced it, assembled a whole team of people. So really, that's my goal, is to create a production company, and that's my expression, is really to express myself in as many ways as possible in all art forms.
And I can't help but think the colorful vibrations that your soul, your art, that draws you out of whatever comes inside and out, because you do multiple things.
Mm-hmm.
And I also feel like it's reflected in your outfit too.
Yeah.
It's just like
Yeah.
everything's great. Like green's great, blue's great. Are there moments where you you have trouble choosing?
Yeah. That's the process I'm kind of in right now. I feel like I can't choose. I feel like the solution is to unify all of the talents that I have. Language is a big part of it. I also teach language. I love language. I'm immersed in French. I want to be fluent in 5 languages. That's my goal. Um, so it's unifying the three, or all of them. There's multiple ones, but I see it as singing, acting, dancing, and then the producing. Um, so the way to do it is, keep doing projects like Dolce Ardor, where I get to wear all these hats and showcase all of it in one project. So I don't think I can choose. I have been asked this before. My mother has asked me this. I've asked this myself. I've written songs about it, poems. I've written journals. I go and travel and ask myself, okay, how do I feel right now walking the streets of Paris? How do I feel right now walking the streets of Berlin? Who am I? And it just always comes back to unifying the talents that I have. For I've been given a certain amount of talents for a reason, just like all people, have been given different talents. Some people are very, very specific in what they do, and that's all they do, and they're very good at it. And I think my talent is having multiple talents. It's hard to. I don't think I can choose. I think I just have to unify, find ways to unify, making films, making albums with different people, creating remixes, working on different genres. Specifically, I like classical. That's the kind of voice I have, but I like musical theater as well. I like electronic. I like Latin alternative. I'm Latina, at the end of the day. So that's the kind of the fire, the foundation underneath me.
Wow, I feel that.
Good. A lot of people don't.
There's such high vibration, high frequencies. What drives you? What drives your art? What human experiences
That's a very good
drive
question.
that?
What drives me the most is the idea of waking up one day and saying, I could have done that. I should have done that. That drives me, where I know that I have to be present in every single moment. And if an opportunity comes up, to just go for it. Getting over my perfectionism. I'm a recovering perfectionist. Has not, that being a perfectionist doesn't help. So if an opportunity comes up and you're not, let's say, quite ready, because you'll never be perfect or ready, just go for it. Travel as much as you can, work with different people, just not it's I don't want to say it's fear that drives me because that can disintegrate a person, but it's that idea of working a monotonous life and then waking up and saying I'm 55, 60 years old and haven't really done much, haven't traveled. Now I get to, so that idea of knowing that I can say, well, I did that. Maybe I didn't do it well. Maybe I failed. Maybe I got hurt, whatever, but at least I did it. And I had that fulfilling experience. So these past 2 years have been filled with travel, with going on adventures by myself, with immersing myself in other cultures and other languages. With this project was a complete experiment. I had no idea if it was going to work or not, but I'm like, I'm going for it. Because I had this dream, I had this idea when I was 16 and I was working on these arias. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool to meld like classical, something so pure as like this aria from the 18th century with something so futuristic and modern like trip hop and festival trap, and then meld it together and see what that looks like, and then make a moving picture and make a show. And we're working on launching. We're gonna have a launch party on the 30th of July and then August 6th in San Diego. So it was all an experiment. And I've learned that from other people where you just everything all we're doing is just an experiment. All of life, you wake up and you have no idea you don't know if you're gonna live or not the next day. You just wake up and you're like, I'm just gonna go for it, period. And I'm gonna enjoy this moment, stay really present. So that's really, I guess, the answer
Yeah.
is staying present.
I hear that there's a lot of zest for life, a lot of acceptance too. By not judging something, you're able to include it
Exactly.
and not compartmentalize. Like, why not trip hop instead of like, why trip hop, right?
Right, right. Yeah, for me, it's anything is possible. I don't really think about boundaries or the idea of, no, well, I don't know if I can do this. Like, uh, anything's possible, especially with music because it's a universal language. So you can go to Zimbabwe, and if they like the vibrations, you can work with a producer out there. And I could still be here, but working with a producer in Zimbabwe, you know? So it's just endless possibilities. So when you start thinking that way, when anything is possible, those opportunities start coming into your life and manifesting.
And I feel like in every journey, there's a duality to it, right? And sometimes we don't appreciate what we have or be present in the moment, and until something has been taken or lost, as like that's the other edge to the double-edged sword, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I hear that there's a lot of inclusion, acceptance, um, and I think where I'm going with this is I hear also something else. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna come back to
Yeah,
where
of
I
course.
started. Um, in your training as an actress, as a performer, was there anything along the lines of that? Did that condition you to be more open, to be more like saying yes to the universe?
Just ask the question one more
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I have a friend of mine who's also in theater,
Mm-hmm.
and one thing they taught him was to just go with it, especially improv.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
just go with it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't judge it. Don't do it. Just be there.
Yes. Yeah. There's that I learned early on, and then a technique that I've been learning as of late through a studio called the Imagine Life is almost like the opposite, where you take one line, like he showed up late, and you stop right there, and you think about what was the taste like in my mouth. Did my left foot hurt? Was I about to cry right before he came in? Did I have suicidal thoughts the day before? What did the egg taste like that morning? how did I feel when I got off the phone with my mom? And then you continue to the next sentence. The sky opened up and it started to rain. And you stop there and you think all of the thoughts that were coming into your system when that happened. And that works better for me. In, of course, when you're like improv is all about just going for it. But this technique that I've been learning as of late is incredible because number one, you never forget those lines because you're becoming that character. You're becoming all of what that encompassed in terms of how you were feeling. What did the taste like? What was happening? Were there animals? So I like to go deep. That's the kind of person I am. So in terms of my art form, the deeper I can go, the better.
Yeah, and it sounds like you are more present too
Yes.
to that moment that you
Absolutely.
are in. When
Yes.
you're saying your lines, when you're
Yes.
being that.
Because you are that character because you've studied everything about what that character is, you know, what they were feeling, what was happening, who was talking to you, did the phone suddenly ring, did your cat started to meet, like everything that happened, those things, as you learn that process and as you learn that character, you won't forget that ever, you know.
I'm going to come back to that topic and tie it up because now I'm going to go back to the double edged kind of duality. So I heard you talk about perfectionism, right?
Yes.
So obviously, we don't appreciate what we've learned until we are searching for that. So that which needs to be addressed in our soul, right? Which is letting go of the perfection, is what I'm hearing.
Right.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about what perfectionism is like for you? Where you think it originated as a young girl, and also we'll start there.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm a recovering perfectionist. So for a long time, I just felt like I had to wait until the exact perfect moment to present something, even like to sing a specific song, an aria that I was working on. The classical technique is takes years and years and years to learn. In your 20s, you're still considered a baby. In your 30s, you're finally starting to emerge. In your 40s, you're like more full blown. It's a technique that you can sing well into your 80s or 90s with the right technique. So it takes that long. So I had a very, very strict teacher who was harping down on every little single thing that I did. And then I was an only child for a very long time. And I grew up in Colombia. And I look a little bit different than a lot of Colombians, even though I'm 100% Colombian. So I got pinpointed a lot. Like, oh, wait, is she the little girl? They thought I was this little actress from a telenovela that was going on then. So I got a lot of attention from a lot of people, always. And so I always felt like I had to present myself in a very specific way. And I had to be this thing that I had imagined, right? And then my mother saying certain things just because she just adored me, you know? But that created this world of where I couldn't possibly showcase myself if it wasn't absolutely perfect. But then when does that stop? It doesn't. And then you don't progress, then you don't move, then people don't know about your art, they don't know about what's going on because you're hiding in this bubble of perfectionism. So I put an end to that because that just doesn't work. So even though I never feel like anything's perfect, anything's ready, actually. I'll work and work and work, and I'll be like, okay, this has to be showcased. I have to do this, even with this project. I'll never feel like it's absolutely ready. There'll always be little things here and there. But I've learned to accept that that's part of the beauty. There's always going to be little flaws, and that's just part of the beauty. So I'm learning to accept that, you know.
I also hear that, well, and a lot of times when people are going through a challenge, right? It could be, you know, it could be identity, or it could be like, well, in this case,
Right.
it's your identity. You've been boxing everything up, but when people box things up, a lot of times it builds up, right?
Yeah.
So I'm I, I I'm imagining that things were happening like back to back and exponentially, like little events that were just building, 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 building. Was there a trigger point that, like, the straw that broke the camel's back kind of
Yeah.
expression, where it was just like, boom, like, I can't do this. I can't be a perfectionist. It stops here.
Yeah, it was when well, I started reading more. Like Wayne Dyer has been a huge inspiration, Marianne Williamson, a lot of people like that. Hey, the whole Hay House community, and I started also observing other people's work and the reactions of, like, let's say a performer, let's say just in Union Square Station or on a train in Paris, and just watching that person perform and thinking, well, in my critical mind, being like, well, that's not perfect, but and then watching the reaction of all these people, and then that idea, like I mentioned before, of making sure I don't wake up one day with all this regret. It's regret that drives me. I do not want that. So just one day I was like, this isn't ready, but let's say I'm just gonna sing in front of these people, even though I know the song isn't where I want it to be, but I'm just gonna do it just for fun, right? And then seeing the reaction and hearing comments, like not hearing the comments that I thought I was gonna hear. So, and then just continuously doing that, because you're just doing a disgrace to yourself by not showcasing the talents that you have and the work that you have. And I've worked for a long time on this. It's now time to showcase it. So it goes back to that original idea of what drives me, and it's that sense of not wanting to wake up with all these regrets. Well, let's move forward then. Let's showcase it. So it's just me having these talks with myself, me knowing that time does move on. We do get older, and you just have a certain allotted amount of time, and then there's other phases in your life. So there's a reason why everything's happening. There's a reason why you've been given certain gifts. It's time to showcase them in that allotted amount of time.
Is there anything that drove you a little bit crazy, like with the perfectionism, like when, especially younger? I hear that. When did you kind of when did you decide you were going to recover? Like, you were just, this is it. I'm going to let go of a lot of this perfectionism and just go for it.
It started like kind of happening when I moved here about 6 years ago, but then it
Okay.
really, really started happening like more like 3 years ago. Um, and it was just like I would randomly perform for somebody, and they'd be like, whoa, I had no idea you could sing like that. And then I'm like, oh, really? And then just hearing that over and over again, or something else that I would do. Um, that reaction really became a catalyst where I'm like, okay, it's now time to really take everything that I've done and worked on and honed and perfected, quote unquote, and showcase it. So it was just a series of different events where I saw people react a certain way, and then also watch, like I said, watch other artists and watch how other people reacted to them. Be like, yeah, doesn't quite add up.
Yeah, let's go a little backwards. It's kind of,
Yes.
we're doing like the greatness and then like the roots, like,
Yes.
So going back to wanting to be perfect and going back to the little girl,
Mm-hmm.
your little girl.
Right.
Um, I hear that she's wanting to please everyone
Mm-hmm.
at the same time.
Yes.
Please all the people who pretty much told her what she's supposed to be, what she's destined to be. So there's a lot of hiding, a lot of like, I feel
Yes.
like through perfectionism, there's a lot of compartmentalizations, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
What was it like for you? What was it really like for that little girl, you know? Can you take us back?
Yeah, I mean, the way, like, my behaviors and the things I felt, yeah, like I said, I do look a little bit different than a lot of the family members and a lot of people in Colombia in general. So I was kind of pinpointed a lot. So I always felt like I was in a spotlight. I've always been very outspoken and very much an extrovert and very coquettish. So I would go up to people and perform on trains, and people would, oh my God, give me money and give me things and compliments and this and that. So I always felt like I was in a spotlight. Um, and I kind of developed in that spotlight almost like my identity was hidden. It was always like my physical appearance. It was always what I could shine, light I can shine on people, but who I really was got hidden for a very, very long time until a series of events came about in my 20s, in my early 20s, when some repressed memories came into the forefront and it all started, making me realize that I had some work to do. That I had been abused, sexually abused, and I had to take that hurt little girl that had been hurt for so long and soothe it and caress and massage. And I went through a deep depression for about 2 years, and that's when I started discovering who I was. But what you said was is absolutely right. Like I was hidden for a very long time. It was all this kind of sparkle and glamour and facade until my early 20s.
In your search to to discover it, process it, and go through that experience of knowing what it was, looking back. Um, what was the emotional journey like for you?
When the memories started coming into the
Yeah.
forefront, very angry, very almost violent. I remember shattering a glass on the floor. My mom wanted to take the, the, the keys away from me, didn't want me to drive, and that was like the most freedom I've felt in a long time, from in terms of my childhood and adolescence. And so she's like, I'm going to take your keys. And I was like, what? And I just shattered the glass. And then I told her, I revealed to her what had happened, the incest that one had gone on, and she was obviously distraught, and that shifted everything in our lives. A lot of things happened, and so from that point on, my relationship with my mother changed, and I started seeking help because I knew I needed it. And so I saw about 7 to 8 psychologists that year. And that didn't help as much. And then I started volunteering, and that started helping, like at a hospital. So I started volunteering, and that helped because I looked at people in their hospital beds and I'm like, well, at least I'm not in a hospital. At least I'm not dying. Well, this is happening to me, but at least I'm not that. So the empathy um, started making its way into my life, and that helped me not feel so much like a victim, which you go through all these stages when you're going through grief and when you're discovering that you've been you've been harmed in this way so deeply. You're You're angry at yourself, you're feeling guilty, you're obviously angry at the perpetrator, you're angry at the people who let it happen, at your parents, this and that. So that helped me come out of the light. Courage to Heal is a book that I love and read, and that helped me a lot. And then the final thing in terms of my process, in that part of my process, in terms of that phase, was when I went to a support group. I chatted with a woman who was a writer, a playwright, and she's told me, she's like, oh, there's an auditioning happening later. I was like, oh, okay. She's like, you should go. I was like, okay, yeah, I haven't really auditioned for anything like this, but okay. I went. I had no idea what to expect. He's like, well, okay, so what do you do? Well, sing and act. Oh, there's a song. Yeah, I'd love to sing it. Looked at the script for a little bit, and he's like, okay, go for it. I did my piece, my a few lines with the other actors, and then I sang impromptu, a song that I hadn't worked on. I didn't really rehearse. I landed the lead, and then we did a mini tour through New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. So in that moment, I realized, okay, I took all that anger and that venomous feeling and, you know, went into my laboratory, so to speak, if you will, put on my goggles, took the microscope, analyzed it, and worked in there and alchemized it and turned it into fearlessness, showmanship, um, being totally extroverted with this voice that had been within me. Because when I was in my deep depression, I remember thinking, well, at least I have a beautiful singing voice. If that's all I have, well, so be it. And that kept me alive, that feeling of having this talent, of having this sentiment within me that loved to showcase itself through voice and through singing and through artistic expression. I decided, well, he's not going to win. I am. I'm going to win this battle because he won for a very, very long time. So I put all my energy into that. And then from there on forward, that's what I've been doing. It was painful. It was a very, very, very dark time in my life. From 15 to 17, I did not know how I was going to live. There's times where I wanted to be a blade of grass, where I wished I was a rock, where I wish I didn't have a heart, where I wish I didn't have blood running through my veins, where I wish I was a robot and I didn't have to do all these human things. But at the same time, thankfully, I'm a little bit of a masochist. And I was able to take that and kind of like it. Be like, oh, well, at least this will give you some sort of fuel. There's still anger that resides. I have forgiven my perpetrator. And forgiving is more something I do for myself than for anybody else. Because it excavates and opens up my path. But I hope that answers your question.
Oh my gosh, I got chills. It's
Yeah.
so powerful.
Yeah.
It really is.
When you can alchemize, when you make that decision of saying, I'm going to take this horribleness, which is being incested, by a very close relative, very, very close, and then not knowing who you are. Are you being awoken with sexual feelings when you're very young? And then being totally confused in that way and being violated and making the decision to not, let's say, go into the world of prostitution or become a stripper or go deep down in that hole of drugs, partying. And actually, LA has actually made me much healthier. I've decided to take the path of spirituality of almost whiteness, if you will, and becoming as healthy as possible. Because there, I know that I can definitely win this battle. So I'm very rebellious and I'm masochistic.
Good
So
combo.
those two qualities have helped me um, win
Yeah.
win this battle because it's a never ending onion that keeps unraveling, that keeps coming apart. Um, but I'm not the only one. There's other people out there. So my goal is to help other women. That's another one of my main goals. Start an organization, help women, mentor women through my art, through my films, through my music. Um, so that's part of that's something that keeps me alive as well.
That also keeps you so present to saying yes and allowing the universe to deliver opportunities to you and seizing it.
Yes, yes,
Because
indeed,
at the heart of it,
indeed,
you want to amplify yourself so you can be the voice for other women out there.
indeed. When I was 14, I wanted to be a psychologist. That was kind of a goal that I had. And I did study psychology at UConn, actually. But the psychologist never worked for me. I never felt like I got much out of it. But what I did get a lot out of when I performed this play called The Church, I played the role of a prostitute, which was another interesting aspect to that because it was during that support group time when I was going through trying to heal these wounds. I ended up getting this role of a prostitute ex stripper who had a very, very dark past, and she was sleeping with the pastor. And so she was the only white woman in this whole black church. And when I performed, I remember in New Jersey, a prostitute, an ex prostitute, maybe she was still doing, living that life, came up to me and like just bawling, completely a mess. And she's like, what you did on that stage, like what you showed, is what I lived. And you helped heal a lot of my wounds from just watching you perform. That day, I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Because if I can touch somebody in that way, by performing, by just exuding what's within me, and by working on honing in on this one character and helping someone heal, and maybe not even, I didn't know it was going to be directly or not, but watching them come up to me and it was visceral. This woman was transformed. Then I've done my job.
It was also the path that you chose not to take.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I
And you
didn't.
took it a different path. You took it through art.
Yes.
And you cathartically had to live through it, through that character.
Yes. Oh, wow. I never saw it that way. That's right. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank
So
you.
powerful.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And also, I hear that you mentioned you had this rebellious spirit. I feel like that rebellion was the rebellion against the voice that was constantly tempting you to self destruct.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And to hide and to not showcase who I was, like who I really am. Um, Marianne Williamson has a quote in his essence. I don't remember word by word, but basically, we are not afraid of our light, not afraid of our darkness, but really of our light and of our success. So, um, being like, I remember in sixth grade also, like, um, I've I've always been done really well in school, but in that year, I decided to make mistakes on purpose. So that I wouldn't do well, so that I wouldn't get straight A's, so that I wouldn't be on the honor roll, so I wouldn't get the presidential award, because I wanted to not be so perfect and not I don't know, shine in that way because of those years where I wanted to hide and be small. So
You needed to go down there. You needed to
yeah,
go deeper
yeah,
because you were so extroverted. It was like there was no room or space to grieve or process your pain. It was almost like you were denying pain for a while.
yeah,
And so, like, going within really helped you get more depth.
I was numb. I was almost like playing dead, which is what happens. It's literally what happens when you're abused. You're like, I'm gonna play dead for a while. Okay, it's over. Okay, 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 I can continue. But you're numb. Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Like masks, right? Putting on the
Yes,
mask.
a facade, a total facade. And then, yeah, of course, then you have to go either you go, you keep continuing to become numb and play dead with drugs in your adult life with drugs and prostitutions, or you face your demons in broad daylight.
It's powerful. I'm gonna have to quote that. Face your demons in broad daylight. Wow, so profound. Going through the support group, getting the opportunity to perform, um, transmuting all that pain, anger, into your art and playing the role of someone you could have been,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
What was that whole experience like for you in the shaping of your colors?
Well, it kind of found me. I wasn't really seeking it out per se. And then when I went to this audition, and then he started developing specific songs for me, and he started developing this project more and decided to take it on the road and kept including me in everything, and we performed in different places. I just realized that there's this whole world out there that one can discover, and if you take the time to like be open and non-selfish and giving and sharing what it is that's within you with others, the world could be a better place. And I felt almost like scared to showcase this, but because I was kept. He asked me over and over again to do several things, and he started expanding his shows, and then I started going to other theater companies as well. I was able to really showcase that, and almost forced opened in a way, but in a good way. It was like, okay, it's time. Here you are. Now it's time. Let's fly. Let's perform. Let's showcase what you've been cultivating, what you've been hiding, for so long. So it was almost like a breakthrough in my life, and at that point where I was able to just be free, even though I was still very scared and still developing. But I was put into this position, like you said, where I'm playing the role of somebody I could have been. If you read the bios of a lot of other women who've gone through similar things, they unfortunately end up down that path. But then being able to thankfully just perform it as a character, not in real life, and just live it for a little bit and share that with this person. This person who came up to me crying had no idea of my real past, but she did see it materialize on stage.
So
and
real.
and it was visceral for her. So that was what I learned. Just not being so hidden, but being able to share that pain, which is what drives me.
And I feel like that pain is also the sustenance that made your characters alive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and that you could take that sustenance and transmute it to all different shapes and forms, which brings me to the next topic. The last part we're doing is about
Dolce Ardor.
Sorry, I can never pronounce
That's okay.
it.
Dolce.
Dolce.
Very good.
Adore.
Ardor.
Art.
Ardor. Good. No, Dolce Ardor.
Thank you. I want to know what the title means and what inspired it.
It means dolce is sweet. Ardor means ardor, pain. So sweet pain. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh,
and that is it. Art imitates life. So what inspired it? Basically, the musical aspect of it, when I was studying this piece, when I was younger in my teen years, studying with my voice teacher, I always thought, I want to do something with this, but I don't want to just do it on a classical stage or in an operatic stage. I want to do something different that's going to bring in all these people, that's going to attract different audiences, where people are going to look at it, hear it, and know the piece, but then say, what have you done here? You've done something a little bit different. So the musical aspect, I that idea was cultivated a long time ago. Then I went to an Alex Grey exhibit. So Tool is one of my favorite bands of all time. I saw Tool in '01, August 23rd. I'll never forget. That was the day a lot of things shifted for me. I went through a spiritual, deep, deep spiritual experience. I cried for about 2 hours during their show. And then I was actually dating somebody. The next morning, I slept in a bathtub that night because I couldn't even sleep with this person in the same bed because I was done. I was a totally changed person. Woke up and said, we need to end this. And that was when I stopped dating people who I actually didn't like. But it was because I felt bad for them. Even I wasn't even attracted to them, but I would date them out of pity. But I was doing myself a disservice. So that was the day I ended that cycle. And literally I felt like organs got rearranged and I had a blood transfusion. Tool did it for me. Alex Grey had his artwork, all his backdrops. Um, One of the pieces I usually have up, but I took it down because I'm going to get a new one. But it reminded me of my mother. And it was like my mother was speaking to me during that moment. And that changed everything for me. Then I went to an event called No Fest. It was led by Alex Grey and Allison. And that's where I met Dave, DTO. And that he was just advertising music production workshops. So I told him I was interested. Then I went over there just out of nowhere in my recovering perfectionist way. I was like, why not? I threw the music on the piano and I was like, how about this? And I started singing and he's like, that's awesome. I love your voice. Let's do it. And ever since then, we've been working on this for about 2 years actually. And then I had this idea. I'm like, well, why don't we make like a little movie, like a moving picture, a music video? And then I wrote down the idea, and the whole idea was to switch the character from, originally in the opera it's a man, it's Paris singing to the three goddesses and having to choose one of the goddesses. And I was like, let's change it from a woman's perspective. And she's singing this to whoever that person may be, and it could be a man's perspective, but in this case, it is a woman. And she's seeking her love. It could be the love of the earth. It could be the love of her mother. It could be the love of her lover. It could be the love of her long lost child. It could be anything. And seeking, seeking, seeking. And in the midst of that, she's literally dismantling and losing her clothes, losing, almost like a snake when they shed skin. So she's shedding skin. And in the video, you'll see she's literally dismantling and going through a transformation, and then realizing, then she goes into a lake, a body of water, almost like that's a baptism, if you will, in the world of Catholicism, and goes into that world, finds herself into this other world where she's totally transformed and realizing that the love she seeks is within. So she is the divine creature. And that's the process that I've been in for the entire time I've been working on this and before.
And I saw the video, and I'm very attuned to the color shifts.
Yes.
First half of the video was outdoors, it was daylight, and she was all in white. But then when she went
black and white, yeah,
black and white.
Yeah.
And then when she went out, when she got out of the water, it became night. But there were so many colors.
Yes.
glowing in the dark. What
Yes.
is that symbolism?
It's kind of almost like what I'm going through, almost like you mentioned before, like a butterfly that's in was in a little cocoon and then just emerges. Freedom, it symbolizes total expression of yourself, of being able to um, go deep, dark into whatever hole you want to go into, be whoever you want to be, explore all kinds of sentiments. So the whole, all the colors of the rainbows are there in terms of your emotions. So it's ultimate freedom, and the freedom that I experienced lately is when you let go of, when you let go of yourself, when you let go of trying to separate yourself, but really becoming one. Freeing yourself from yourself.
Whereas also I hear from the very beginning of this interview you talk about being a producer and choosing all of it.
Yes, having that freedom.
So you
Exactly.
really broke down the barriers. You really broke
Exactly.
down boxes,
Exactly.
labels, categories. You're just like,
Exactly.
this can mesh with that, that can mesh with this. Trip hop, electronica, opera, anything goes.
Right, right, right. And then being able to assemble a team, doing the Indiegogo, getting the funds to do it, and it is work. It worked in this seamless kind of, well, not completely seamless. We had a lot of stuff, but it worked. We did it. But yeah, just freeing yourself from yourself at the boundary of the constraints, taking charge, realizing that you are a powerful being, you are a divine creature, you can do anything it is you want as long as you do have a plan of action, you assemble the right people, and voila, you know? So that's the inspiration behind it, is just unifying, taking the venom and consistently injecting myself with the anti-venom that I consistently create and perfect, learning this art of alchemizing, you know.